Everyone here tonight to the April Council meeting. A special welcome to our visitors in the gallery tonight. I would like to begin tonight's meeting by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, we celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Please note the privacy notice. This public meeting is being streamed live via our Facebook page and made available for public access on our website, along with the official minutes of this meeting. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event that your image is broadcast to the public. It is also assumed that your consent is given to the use and disclosure of any information that you share at the meeting, including personal or sensitive information, to any person who accesses those recordings or minutes. Item number 3, apologies. Councillors, do we have any apologies tonight?
I'll move that recommendation that the apology from Councillor Summer be noted and a leave of absence be granted as the motion.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ozavari. All those in favour? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, do we have any declarations of conflict of interest that need to be declared this evening?
Yes, I do. In relation to item 7.2, I'll declare a conflict of interest in that I've got an association with several of the recipients.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Noted. Item 5, confirmation of minutes of the previous meetings. Is any item of the minutes opposed? Would the Councillor please like to move the recommendation? Councillor Giovanetti.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation that the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting held on the 19th of March 2019, as circulated, be confirmed.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Mr Harriott, do we have any public questions tonight?
We have none tonight.
Thank you very much. Noted. Councillor, if we now turn to page 2, item 7.1, advertising of community and aerodrome leases. The recommendation is on pages 2 and 3. Would the council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Patterson, what would you like to move?
I'd like to move the motion or the recommendation on page 2, 3, and I think we even get over to staying at number 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, it's very basic. It is a legal requirement that we advertise the leases that council takes out. A lot of these are to do with hangars out of the Shepparton Aerodrome, but some of them are to do with Sky Halls. The Koala Recreation Reserve is a considerable one. The Scout Hall at Koala, and Route and the Guides and Scout Complex. And the rest of them are basically hangars which they put aeroplanes in.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I think it's pretty basically clear what Councillor Patterson has said, that the majority of the leases are for the hangars out at the aerodrome, and that is for a 10-year period that they will be leased to those individuals. We do state that if there happens to be any change to the airport, then that has been included in the lease documents and the council won't be liable for any costs. It's also interesting to note that the Koala Recreation Reserve, which is the home of AFL Goulburn Murray, have had their lease since 2017 and have only just recently decided to sign it. So I hope they're not as slow paying out some of the footy clubs their annual revenue benefit. But they are signing a lease.
I'm sure that won't be the case. Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 6, item 7.2, our Sporting Future Funding Round 2 for 2018-2019. Would a councillor please like to move a motion?
Madam Mayor, this is the item I'm declaring a conflict of interest in.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Giovanetti.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 7 in relation to the future sporting grants.
Thank you very much. It's actually pages 7 and 8. Yep, sorry, my mistake. Pages 7 and 8. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. My apologies for not including page 8 because I did miss it. I think this is a great opportunity for the clubs within the municipality to make application for funding for the various projects that they have on. This year, in this particular round, we're allocating $96,000, which is not a small amount of money. Clubs range from the smaller clubs, such as your Northern Victoria Show Jumping Club, Katandra Cricket Club, Merch, Calamba Footy Club, through to one of the soccer clubs, Shepparton United Football Club, have all been successful, and they are only a small selection. Sporting clubs in this day and age find it very difficult to raise funds, and the opportunity to apply for council grants does give them opportunities to purchase items for their clubs that they would not ordinarily be able to.
Thank you, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor. Councillor Giovanetti covered it beautifully.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion?
Just very
Councillor
quickly,
Patterson?
Very quickly, Madam Mayor, it's great to see that these are spread out. A lot of our stuff tends to be people claim to be Shep Basic. We've got Tallygarootna, Tatura, Murchison, Northern Victoria, Katandra, Tallygarootna and Shep United Football Club. So, it's a good spread. It covers the whole municipality, so it's a good thing.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed, and we invite Councillor Hazelman back in. Councillors, we now go to page 18, item 7.3, contract 1883, construction of Kyalla Park Recreation Reserve Main Oval redevelopment. We also have a recommendation on page 18. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor like to move that motion?
I'll move that.
Councillor Ozavari?
I'd like to move that recommendation as the motion on page 18, items 1 and 2. I'll read it out because it's only short. Accept the tender submitted by Jarvis Delahaye Contractors of 290 Doyles Road, Shepparton for contract 1883, construction of Kyalla Park Recreation Reserve, main oval redevelopment for the lump sum price of $653,285.82, including GST. And further, point 2, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the contract documents.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, very briefly, the motion is self-explanatory in the sense that we have to authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the contract documents. Arguably, infrastructure for mine is a huge council liability in the sense that infrastructure costs an enormous amount of money to build, to maintain and to continue to develop, and this is a classic example of that, where the Kyalla Park Recreation Reserve main oval redevelopment will significantly benefit from the infrastructure that goes into when this is completed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, just to add that this is just a further indication of our commitment to furthering our sporting prowess, in our city, and that's in line with our aspirations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 9, item 7.4, contract 1864 asphalt services. The recommendation is on page 23. Would a councillor please like to move a motion? Councillor Ozavari.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation contained on page 23, items 1, 2 and 3 inclusive. They're self-explanatory.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think it's adequately covered in the items that are put forward as part of the recommendation. The total value is of particular significance, $13,860,000, which is a substantial amount of money. Don't propose to say anything more on it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Giovanetti?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'd just like to say that I think it's great that what council is doing with these large tenders that are going out, 13.86 mil is not a small amount. And by having a panel of contractors that we can work with, it enables us to get the best possible price that we can by ensuring that the price that we're given at the time of the works are going to start or the tender's going to commence, that we can shop around from that panel.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovannetti. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we'll now go to page 27, item 7.5, contract 1907, provision of cleaning services for Aquamoves. The recommendation is also on page 27. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor like to
I'm happy to
move
move it,
motion.
Madam Mayor, and that is the recommendation on page 27. I won't read it out because it's going to become very repetitive over the next few items that we're going to be dealing with.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, this is for the cleaning contract for Aquamoves for a 2-year period plus a 3 by 1 year option that the cleaners have. A number of tenders were received for the project, 10 in total, of which 10 were actually deemed as being were deemed as conforming. The successful tenderer has won the tender on a competitive basis, and this is one of several that we will be approving or not approving during the evening.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Patterson?
I'd just like to quickly say it did come under budget by 30,000, which is a great thing. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to congratulate the procurement team. What they did, they got all the preferred tenders or anyone that was interested, put them in a bus, took them around and showed them exactly what had to be done. And that really eliminates potential for, I didn't know I was responsible for that, so congratulations to them for doing that, and it's part of the process, and yeah, good result under budget.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Good point. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we'll now go to page 31, item 7.6, contract 1908, provision of cleaning services, children and youth services and community hubs. The recommendation is also on page 31. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Adam.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that the council, and as Councillor Giovannetti explained, we won't read it out, it's all there on page 31, there's 2 points.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's the same company, obviously, that was successful. So I suppose the fact that they've got two at this stage, obviously they can perform the work more viably than some of the other companies. So congratulations to them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just would like to point out that an interview was conducted with the highest scoring tenderer to confirm that whatever was submitted, actually it was, that was just to verify that. So it's a good process, and yeah, so the interview verified that the proposal had real merits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, will now go to page 35, item 7.7, contract 1885, provision of facility cleaning services, council key operational, recreational and minor operational buildings. The recommendation is also on page 35. Would a councillor please like to move a motion?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommendation printed on page 35.
Thank you, Councillor Hazeman. Do I have a seconder, please?
I'll second the motion.
Councillor Adam. Councillor Hazeman, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, the briefest of comments, because it's already been said for the previous two contracts. It's the same firm again. I just note that over the three contracts, the variation to the approved budget estimate is a net in the order of $100,000. That's a very positive outcome for the council.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to note that that successful company has secured $2.3 million roughly over 5 years via the three contracts. So I'm sure they're happy about it, and I'm sure we'll be satisfied with their services. I hope.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors will now go to page 39, item 7.8, contract 1917 to Lambra Bridge refurbishments, and the recommendation is also on page 39. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Patterson, what would you like to move?
Yes, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 39, please. Sections 1 and 2.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Joe Vanetti. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, this is a very hard one. It's turned out to be a lot dearer than we initially expected. It is very easy when you live in a place like Shepparton on Rupert to not understand the importance of infrastructure in bush. This is a bridge that ideally should be replaced. It's a bridge that should be a part of the dual bypass. Therefore, we wouldn't need to be doing this, but we need to do it. And it has such a large impact on the residents. Just from a few of the conversations I've had with the people out there with their schooling, their kindergartens, you know, you might only live 200 metres over the bridge, but unless you can access that bridge, you've got to change kindergartens or drive an hour each day to get into Shepparton and back out. So it has a really, really big influence on the people that live out there. It was in their community plan. Well, it actually wasn't in their community plan. They thought it was a separate piece of infrastructure. So it is taking a lot of dollars for us to fix it, but we have to do it. It is important for that community to have that access through, as well as for the safety aspect with ambulance and fire and everything else. It's important we keep those avenues open. So, yes, it's very expensive, but we need to do it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Joe Vanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I totally agree with Councillor Patterson in what he said in relation to the bridge when it's actually out of action. It is a significant nuisance to the people who live out at Talamba, particularly those, as Councillor Patterson said, those parents with children, but also the farmers. I was talking to a bloke out at Talamba. He had one part of his farm was on one side of the river and the other part was on the opposite side. And he had to travel to the other side via Murchison, which is a great impost to those people. The other thing is that it is a big project, 1.65 million. We were successful in obtaining a grant for 930,000, which significantly adds to the project. But as Councillor Patterson said, we have rescheduled that this bridge be totally replaced in 10 years, but with any of these old bridges, maintenance needs to be kept up with to ensure that they are usable until such time as we get a new one.
Thank you very much, Councillor Joe Vanetti. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carry, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 44, item 8.1, the Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Alliance Advisory Committee Annual Report 2017-2018. The recommendation is also on page 44. Would a councillor please like to move a motion? Councillor Abdullah.
Yeah, I would like to move the recommendation on page 44 as a motion that the Council receive and note the Women's Charter Advisory Committee's 2017-2018 annual report.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just would like to highlight that it was another busy year for many passionate and active members of the committee who were wanting to achieve the shared goals of actively participating in community matters and also to work for women's development. So in the annual report, I would encourage everyone to go through the annual report, but obviously the annual report shows all the highlights of 2017-2018. The committee was involved in working towards the charter principles, three main principles of gender equity, diversity and active citizenship. The committee arranged many events, training programs for committee members as well as for other community members. One of the highlights of the committee is always that International Women's Day event that's celebrated every year around 8th of March. And basically, it's and during that event, International the Women's Charter Award is also announced. And I personally believe that it's a very effective way of acknowledging a local woman who has made a difference to the community, and it highlights the importance of having a positive role model in the community. So yeah, so these are all the good pieces of work that the committee has been doing in 2017 and 18, and obviously there are bigger and better plans for following years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. This committee has had a very positive impact on women in Greater Shepparton in promoting women to leadership roles and also promoting their principles of gender equity, diversity and active citizenship. So it's a very worthwhile committee, and I commend the work that they have done over the past 12 months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sutton. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 8.2 on page 48, Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Alliance Action Plan. The recommendation is also on page 48. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
Yep. I would like to move the recommendation on page 48 as a motion that the Council adopt the Greater Shepparton Women's Charter Advisory Committee Action Plan 2018 to 2021.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, so this action plan is, the last action plan was developed in 2016, and now this action plan has been renewed. The committee members have put in a lot of effort, and brainstorming exercise was done before the action plan was developed. The action plan is basically to identify key activities around the charter principles, 3 charter principles: gender equity, active citizenship and diversity. So under these 3 heads, several activities have been identified, and the committee will work around those activities to deliver the action plan.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we'll now go to page 51, item 8.3, section 86, special committee memberships. The recommendation are on pages 51 and 52. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 51, Madam Mayor. And I will read it because it involves volunteers, so I think it's important that they be recognised. The recommendation is that the Council appoint to the Katandra West Community Facility Committee of Management, appoint the following members for a 4-year term commencing 23rd of April 2019 and concluding 23rd of April 2023. Greg Barr, Rick Dunham, Steve Hickey, Aaron Howes, Leanne Ireland, Lee Simpson, Sam Smith, Corey Wilson. There have been a resignation from that committee, and the Council does acknowledge the contribution of Debbie Bradley to the Katandra West Community Facilities Committee of Management, and also acknowledge the contribution of Jodie Brisbane to the Durrangol Recreation Reserve and Community Centre Committee of Management, and accept her resignation and rescind her membership accordingly.
There's a continued recommendation over the page.
Yeah,
Thank you, Councillor.
okay.
I know you've started something now. You better finish
I
it.
made a blue there, didn't I? We're now also on number 4.
64 and 65.
52, thank you.
We acknowledge the contribution of Alison Knight to the Toolamba Recreation Reserve and Community Centre Committee of Management, and accept her resignation and rescind her membership accordingly. And we resolve that all members who are not councillors or nominated officers of the Katandra West Community Facilities Committee of Management continue to be exempt from the requirement to complete interest returns in exercise of power granted to council under section 81(2)A of the Local Government Act 1989.
Thank you very much. I think that's a record. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, I think it's self-explanatory, Madam Mayor. Obviously, I've probably read most of it, but the thing is, it's great that we have these people putting their hands up for these Section 86 communities, particularly in the smaller areas like Katandra West, who are a very vibrant little community in their own right with the facilities they have there, and it's great that they have these very influential people on their committee who are able to achieve a lot of good things that has happened out there over the last few years. And we also thank the members of the Katandra West Committee and the other committees who have resigned, and thank them for their efforts, and I'm sure that Council will write to them individually and thank them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Will any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Will any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Adam.
Madam Mayor, I just want to point out, maybe I'm reading this wrong, but the recommendation begins that the council appointment to the Katandra West Community Facility Committee of Management received, appoint the following members. Should the word receive be in there, or should we just appoint the following members? I'm being pedantic here, but does that read right to everyone else?
Same, receive, appoint.
Well,
happy with that?
Received and appoint, it should be.
No and in there. Does that change
Yeah,
anything?
I think that's quite
I think
clear.
the gist of it's there. That's all. Nothing, just a point of clarification.
Yes, you are being pedantic.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, point of clarification. I think that's quite clear. Thank you, Councillor Adam. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion?
I'm just concerned their terms will have expired if we don't hurry up.
Hurry up, okay. Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. So we'll now go to page 55, item 8.4. This is a very special item tonight. Naming of the Aquamoose Pool Hall in the honour of Willie O'Callaghan, who I'm very delighted to have here in the gallery tonight. The recommendation, councillors, is also on page 55. So just clarifying that, item 8.4, naming of the Aquamoose Pool Hall in the honour of Willie O'Callaghan. Would a councillor like to move that motion, please? Councillor Abdullah.
I would like to move the recommendation on page 55 as a motion that the council recognise Willie O'Callaghan for her extraordinary 60-year commitment to swimming and positive impact on the Aquamoose community by naming the Aquamoose indoor aquatic environment the Willie O'Callaghan Pool Hall.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Very pleased to see that this step has been taken. Obviously, Willie's contribution to our community over the past 60 years has been outstanding. And of course, her contribution to swimming over 60 years, no doubt, strongly supports the Aquamove's business improvement plan vision, which is to be a hub of health and well-being by motivating and educating our community to enjoy healthy, active, happy, and connected lives. So I would like to say thanks and congratulations to Willie because her dedication, passion and commitment in this area has been outstanding, and we are pleased to be able to recognise that.
Thank
you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think 60 years of service to anything is remarkable in itself, but especially to something as important as swimming. Teaching younger kids, of course, as well. So there's probably countless lives that Willie has saved without even knowing so. But I was a bit concerned when I saw the Willie O'Callaghan Pool Hall. I thought it was a billiards type of reference, but I know it's not. So congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak? And if they do, I think we'll ignore it. Would any councillor like to, I better do that correctly. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Patterson?
I'd like to quickly say, if you describe a volunteer, this is the one. It's just amazing, and things that she wouldn't know herself. How many lives has she saved by teaching how to swim. You know, how many families have benefited from Will's great contribution over the year? She doesn't know, Will never know, but it's a magnificent effort, and we need more of her.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Sutton.
I'd just like to thank Willie for her commitment over the years. It's 60 years, it's a wonderful time, and I know that she's been down there nearly every day for many of those years. So thank you, Willie. It's really appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. Would any other councillor wish to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, I've already spoken, but I just think a round of applause for Willie might be in order. What do you think?
We haven't finished yet, so we're still going.
Oh, well, okay.
No, we haven't finished.
Well, if you listen to the rest of my
definitely needs a grand
suggestion, it was after
finale.
the vote.
I agree with that. I think Mr Harriott would like to speak, and I would also like to speak. So, Mr Harriott, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations, Willie. I know your dedication. When I arrived here in 2000, my daughter dragged me down to Aquamoves to go swimming very early in the morning, and I'd sleep on the concrete benches down there, and you'd be dedicated and supervise the laps up and down. So you've been involved in masters and swim squads and private lessons. You've looked after national and state representatives, so you've gone to the highest level in your coaching, and then you had me. I probably failed you in the coaching line there, but I really appreciated the lessons you gave me, and you treated me no differently to a top swimmer, tried to give me all the techniques and what have you. And I know from being around, the people you associate with just respect you so much, whether it's the masters, the older people in the Masters Club, or the youngest kids that are just new to the sport. Immediately they respect you for the way you deal with them. You treat people with respect, and it's just fantastic. And this honour could not have gone to a better person, so congratulations.
Thank you, Mr Harriott. And finally, I would also like to acknowledge Willie's contribution. I myself, 47 years ago, was a lifesaver there at the Shepparton pool with my 16-year-old brother. And I wasn't a very strong swimmer, but I certainly had the support that a young person needs to be encouraged. And I do remember that. And talking to Willie tonight, she remembered me, so I'm hoping it's for the right reasons. So congratulations on all of us here tonight. I think it does deserve a round of applause. All right, so we will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, definitely unopposed. It's a hard act to follow, that one. All right, let's head on to page 58, item 8.5, appointing new members of the Greater Shepparton Disability Advisory Committee. The recommendation is also on page 58. Would a councillor please like to move a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 58. Which, as I said before, I'm just checking to make sure there's nothing on 59. I think we should read out people who volunteer for these particular roles on the Section 86 committees. So I'll read the motion. That is, the Council, having considered nominations received for appointment to the Disability Advisory Committee, appoint the following member for a term of 2 years and 2 months, commencing on the 16th of April 2019 and expiring 20th of June 2021. And that is to appoint Diane Baglin. We also acknowledge the resignation of Kelly Barber and thank her for the valuable contribution to the Disability Advisory Committee, and adopt the amended Greater Shepparton Disability Advisory Committee terms of reference.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovanetti. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Giovanetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. As Council representative on this committee and having had some involvement with the disability services for some 23 years, it's great to see such an energetic committee of council involved in many aspects of council decision-making processes. You think Disability Advisory Committee, what do they do? Well, they have significant involvement with decisions in relation to where disabled car parks go. They have considerable contribution to public entry to buildings, etc. They also look at issues that pertain to people with disabilities and how to overcome them, and that they are really a very proactive group. And I'd just like to thank Kelly Barber for her service on that committee for the last, I'd say over a 12-month period. She's done an excellent job, and we thank her for her services. The terms of reference, that is a standard process that council goes through to review terms of references every 2 to 3 years of these committees, and these terms of reference have been reviewed by the committee itself, and the recommendation is here before us tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to add that Council obviously have a lot of Section 86 committees and advisory committees, but I feel this is one of the more important ones in respect that it really affects people's lives. Some of the ideas and some of the ideas that come out of this committee actually do get put into action, and they have a real impact on people's lives. So I think it's one of our more important and relevant committees, and fully support Councillor Giovanetti's words.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Patterson.
I'd just like to make a comment, and I'm sure I'm right. Diane Baglin, who is our new member, Diane went through our leadership program, and I think it's great that people that go through that program are now taking that next step. And these are the positions we need those people to be stepping onto and taking up that shortfall of volunteers. Diane's done a great job, so yeah, congratulations to her.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, will now go to page 62, item 9.1, review of asset depreciation policy 34. The recommendation is also on page 62. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
I'll move that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Would you like
I'll
to
read it out, actually, because it's not that long.
Thank you, Councillor
The
Adam.
Council adopt version 2.0 of the asset depreciation policy 34.pol 3.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ozavari got just in there. Thank you very much. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
This is an exciting subject, so I'll restrict my comments to the executive summary. I'll just read it out because I think it's worth reading out. Greater Shepparton City Council Asset Depreciation Policy 34.pol 3 was adopted at the 17th May 2016 Ordinary Council meeting. It's now due for review. Depreciation is an accounting concept that reflects the allocation of the value of an asset over its estimated useful life to the council. The asset depreciation policy has been reviewed to reflect changes previously incorporated and disclosed in the 2016-17 and 2017-18 financial statements for useful lives of concrete footpaths, including shared paths and concrete and timber bridges. No other changes have been proposed.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 66, item 9.2, review of asset capitalisation policy 3, pol 3 on page 66 is also the recommendation. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor Ozavari.
I'd like to move the recommendation as the motion on page 66, that the council adopt version 2 of the asset capitalisation policy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ozavari. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Not at this time, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazelman.
No, Madam Mayor, it's very straightforward.
Any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to item 9.3, the 2018-2019 Q3 forecast review. There is a recommendation also on page 68 with an amendment. Would someone like to move that recommendation, please?
You look at me. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move as a motion that Council adopt the revised forecast identified by the 2018-19 Q3 forecast review, and 2, that Council receive and note the March 2019 monthly financial report.
which is actually up on the screen, that amendment. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'm reluctant to break with tradition, and so at this point I'd invite Mr Teitzel to make some relevant comment.
Thank you very much.
Always have a go and break tradition, Councillor Hazelwood. Thank you for that. I'll talk firstly about the forecast review. So this is the Q3 forecast review. Happy to say we're now forecasting a surplus of $19 million, which is an increase of $2.4 million compared to the last quarter. This is predominantly due to a detailed review of materials and services expenditure that we've conducted over the last couple of months, and we've managed to find some significant savings in that area, which is reflected in that forecast. Capital expenditure has also been forecast down. We've moved from a capital expenditure forecast at the end of Q2 at 52.6 down to 43.8. The $7.6 million movement represents projects that will start before year end, but due to setting up the various contracts and the commencement times of works, we won't have those projects completed. So we've had to move that money into the 1920 draft budget as rebudgeted items. Examples of those sorts of projects are some $2 million less on the Shepparton Art Museum in this financial year. That all moves into next financial year. Balaclava Verney Dookie Road intersection, we're still working with Regional Roads Victoria to finish what their requirements are in that regard, and the contract negotiations on that one. So that has been delayed a bit, and there's a number of other projects in there as well, but those are the two big ones. This reduction in the capital expenditure and combined with the increased surplus means that our cash balance is going to increase compared to the last forecast, which means that our projected liquidity position at year end is 219%, almost 220%, compared to 170% at the end of Q2. So that's an improvement there. In terms of the monthly financial statements, as indicated by where we're at with the Q2 review, the financial statements are looking fairly positive, and all of the operating performance indicators, financial health and financial obligations are all sitting well within the accepted ranges, and in some instances exceeding where budget was indicating we would be. And as indicated last month, the statutory fees are showing an unfavourable variance. Materials and services were showing a favourable variance. That's now picked up in the Q3 forecast review. Important to note in the monthly financial report, which is an attachment, you can see the graph that's in that document showing that our expenditure rate on capital expenditure is starting to trend upwards. That's consistent with what we've done in previous years, where this period of year where it's where the conditions are good, we've got the procurement lined up for a lot of projects, we start to see a kick up in the expenditure. So that, combined with the identification of projects that won't get completed this year, means that we should be on track to hit the year end where we expect to. Thanks, councillors.
Thank you very much, Mr Teitzel. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Not at all, thank you, Councillor. Madam Mayor, sorry.
Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 71, item 9.4, contracts awarded under delegation and contracts advertised but yet to be awarded. The recommendation is also on page 71. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please?
Happy to move that motion, Madam Mayor. Happy to move the recommendation on page 71 that the council note tendered contracts awarded under delegated authority by the CEO, contracts awarded under delegated authority by Director, and requests for tenders advertised but not yet awarded.
Just page 71, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Giovannetti. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, briefly, Madam Mayor, thank you for that. It's good to see that 5 contracts have been awarded over the past month. They range from $300,000 for early intervention services, $330,000 for design and construction of Merrigham Splash Park, supply and installation of swimming pool heater, and it's great that it's gone to a local contractor, and also design for the Cat Library extension has been approved as well. Interesting to note though, there's 18 contracts that are either have closed or are about to close, and decisions are yet to be made on. So I'd say for council staff's perspective, you've got a fair bit of work to do in probably a very short period of time.
That's it. Thank you very much, Councillor Giovanetti. Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. And just following on from those comments, the number of capital projects listed there probably reflects the comments made by Mr Teisel in the previous item that the capital expenditure is trending upwards, and probably next month we'll see that more so significantly than when these are awarded. And of course there is the pressure of meeting our capital works completion target by end of financial year, which no doubt will have all of our staff focused on achieving that goal.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor,
Councillor Adams.
Just note that item number, or project contract number 1917, I presume is one we approved earlier on, awarded, correct? Yes. So that is technically awarded now as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Which is great, the Toolamba Bridge refurbishment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adams. Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we'll now go to page 76, item 10.1, Major and Minor Events Grants Round 2 for 2018-2019. The recommendation is on page 77. Would a councillor please like to move a motion? Councillor Ozavari.
Madam Mayor, I'll move the recommendation as contained on page 77.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Major and minor event grants are fairly self-explanatory. A number of applicants have been successful in gaining various amounts of money to fund various functions and facilities of their choosing at various examples. I didn't know what the Victorian Futurity Cutting Club was, so I spoke to Dr. Google, who indicated it's to do with horses, and have to cut have 2.5 minutes to work 2 or 3 beasts and keep them from returning back to the herd. So that was something I learnt. But no, look, this is a regular occurrence. The amount of money that we've dispersed is $11,200, and I'm sure all the applicants will be very happy to receive the funding allocation that they applied for.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would just like to note that it's really pleasing to see that some of the community groups are very prominent, and they every year they receive this award and this grant, and that is something that they are making a difference, because the events that they organize, it just makes everybody happy and feel very engaged. So I would like to just note that Goulburn Valley South Sudanese Community Association and Shepparton Malayali Association, they have been very regular in making an application and receiving and then delivering. So it's really good to see that the community is really active in this space. And although some of the amounts, they look very small, but for these small community groups, this means a lot. So it's a good financial assistance for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abdullah. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 86, item 10.2, the Greater Shepparton Business Centre Tenancy Policy. The recommendation is also on page 86. Would a councillor please like to move a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a motion that the council adopts the Greater Shepparton Business Centre Tenancy Policy.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Yes, Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is in respect to our New Dookie Road complex there, our business centre. It's been there for many, many years. I think it's doing a great job, has done a great job over the years. It's helping small businesses or any type of business get established. I know many that have actually started their life there and have expanded and become relevant business in Greater Shepparton. They've moved on to employ people and say, look, it's a great thing. So I fully support continuing it, and that's just adopting the new policy that's in place now. Doing a great job.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Councillor Hazeman, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, Madam Mayor, it's been well covered.
Thank you very much. Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 90, item 10.3, Greater Shepparton Heritage Advisory Committee Annual Report for 2018. The recommendation is also on page 90. Would a council please like to move a motion? Councillor Abdullah.
I would like to move a recommendation on page 90 as a motion that the Council receive and note the Greater Shepparton Heritage Advisory Committee Annual Report 2018 for the year ended 31st December 2018.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor...
There's plenty of us.
Councillor Ozavari. Councillor Abdullah, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, as we all know, the primary purpose of this committee is to act as an advocate for all cultural heritage matters within the municipality. It has an advisory role to the council in matters of preservation and promotion of heritage. And for the year ending December 2018, there have been many significant achievements to its credit. Committee has been busy in working hard to raise the profile of heritage within our community and beyond, I would say. If you look at the annual report, some of the highlights of 2018 have been the Bruce Wilson Memorial Heritage Lecture, Heritage Grants Program that was very successful. It was started in 2017 and it's continuing. Cultural Heritage Awards launch for 2019. The launch was happened in 2018. The committee also undertakes some educational visits, and of course one of the significant work that the committee was involved in was the Heritage Study 2C. This study was completed with significant input from the members of the committee. And the committee also arranges masterclasses and presentations on heritage matters. So, yep, I'm very pleased to be on this committee as a councillor representative, and it's always a pleasure to work with such committed members. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank two committee members who resigned in 2018. So I would like to say thanks to Val Hill and Warwick Finlay, who spent some 7 years on this committee and made significant contributions. Their passion and enthusiasm was just very impressive. So I really want to thank to those members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Abdullah. Councillor Ozavari, would you like to speak to the motion?
I thank Madam Mayor.
Would any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Would any councillor wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 93, item 10.4, Community Sustainability Grant Round 2 for 2018-2019. The recommendation is also on page 93. Would a councillor like to move a motion, please? Councillor like to move that one, please?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I can move that.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelman. Would you like to move that?
I'll move the recommendation as printed on page 93 of the agenda.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Adam. Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Look, there's 4 very significant projects being funded here. Look, and it's not, in the context of our global budget, $7,980 is not a lot of money. But for each of these groups that are delivering these projects, it's a substantial amount of money that impacts on the viability of what they're trying to achieve. So I quite often think that through some of this smallish funding that we provide, we get a significant impact in terms of community development, capacity building and a viable project being delivered.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, what he said, absolutely.
Okay. Would any council wish to speak against the motion? Would any council wish to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, we now go to page 100, item 10.5, new business grant applications. The recommendation is also on page 100. Would a council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Giovannetti.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 100.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Sutton. Councillor Giovannetti, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. We've had two applications from two new businesses that are just establishing here in Shepparton, Shepparton Brewery and Melrose Proprietary Limited, being an Italian restaurant. I think it's great that Council is able to help new businesses in the establishment, in their establishment costs for when they first set up business. It's one of the ways that we can help and encourage business into the town. These projects relate to the brewery for a couple of roller doors. I hope they're made of very strong steel so that they maintain their security. And the Italian restaurant is having a couple of bars put in. So between the brewery and the bars and the restaurant, we've got another couple of drinking venues for the local population, which I'm sure they will appreciate.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sutton, would you like to speak to the motion?
It's good to see us being able to support these small businesses. It's always good to have new businesses come to town because it's growing our town, giving us something else to do and other places to go. So it's not a lot of money, but every little bit helps when you're opening a business. So yes, it's a very good thing to do for the council.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sutton. Would any council like to speak against the motion? Would any council like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like
Councillor
to add
Adam.
I just want to add a couple of comments in respect to the fact I remember discussing this a few years ago when we established this grant. There was a few comments in respect to people who have already established businesses and whether they missed out, but one of the outcomes was that there was some tight guidelines that were actually created, and I'm pretty confident those guidelines have been adhered to. So just to read a couple of lines out of the background here, it says the guidelines outline that grant funding be used for infrastructure or property works that assist in the establishment of these new businesses. I think that's what we're doing. We're not promoting them in any other way. We're just giving them a little bit of a helping hand to get established, and obviously hopefully will lead to a successful business, and that'll create more employment and stimulate the economy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Would any other council like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Council, we now go to page 104, item 11, reports from councillors, nil received. Item 12, reports from special and advisory committees, nil received. Item 13, notice of motion amendment or rescission, nil received. Item 14, documents for signing and sealing, nil received. So we'll now move on to page 105, item 15.1, Councillors' Community Interaction and Briefing Program. The recommendation is on page 106. Would a council please like to move a motion? Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move a motion that the summary of the Councillors' Community Interaction and Briefing Program be received and record of assemblies of councillors be noted.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Orovari. Councillor Adam, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, I think it's fairly straightforward. These are many of the events and briefings we've attended over the past month or so. It's all there in black and white. It just shows that councillors do overall attend many different events and many briefing sessions for most of us.
Thank you very much. Councillor Orovari, would you like to speak to the motion?
All been covered, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Would any council like to speak against the motion? Would any council like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. Councillors, on page 107, item 16, urgent business not included in the agenda, nil received. Item 17, confidential management reports. Item 17.1, designation of confidentiality of information, reports attached. We have a recommendation on page 107. Would council like to move a motion, please? Councillor Patterson.
I'd like to move the recommendation on page 107. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hazelman. Councillor Patterson, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hazelman, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? We will now go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Motion carried, unopposed. So, councillors, that's the end of our council meeting tonight, and I would now like to declare the meeting closed at 6:32. Thank you very much for coming.